Welcome everyone to this explainer. Today we are diving into some absolutely fascinating reports from corporate.Turnaround.com, and they use this incredible metaphor to help us understand how companies actually survive a massive crisis. Basically, they treat the corporation like a patient lying on an operating table. We're going to explore the critical anatomy of how businesses execute real, lasting transformations rather than just, talking about them endlessly. Today, our focus is entirely on what turnaround experts call Pillar 2, operational excellence. Okay, let's dive right into this. It's a question that plagues boardrooms literally everywhere. Why do brilliant, beautifully crafted strategies so often die the exact second they hit execution? Well, the source material blames what they call corporate viruses. We're talking about complacency after a string of successes, weak financial controls, and bloated legacy systems. You can have the absolute greatest strategy on paper, but if your corporate body's infected with these silent killers, your plans are just going to stall out.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. The framework from changemanagementcenter.com actually treats the company exactly like a human patient. If you look at the 8 pillars of a turnaround, financial health is the bloodstream and the business model is the DNA. Strategy? Well, that's the brain. But think about it. The brain can't lift a single pound without muscle. Pillar 2, operational excellence, is that corporate muscular system. It is the raw machinery required to actually do the heavy lifting of change. The Operations ebook gives this a very clinical definition. It simply calls it the organization's capacity to do. It's not about what you plan. It's about disciplined processes and ruthless cost control. Without this muscular system functioning properly, your execution gaps are just going to widen. The exact same problems will resurface quarter after quarter, and, as the reports warn in no uncertain terms, any corporate turnaround lacking this muscle will inevitably hemorrhage cash and fail.
The texts outline a really stark contrast here. On one side, you have the sick organization. It suffers from a startling condition called corporate bulimia. That's this vicious cycle of binge and purge staffing, with wild hiring sprees followed by abrupt firing because they completely lack basic process control. On the other side is the healthy organization. This entity runs on agile operations and data-backed execution. It fundamentally rehabilitates its structure instead of just frantically throwing bandages over the friction.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how turnaround experts actually treat the sick organization. You don't just throw medicine at it and hope for the best. You have to follow a rigorous 3-phase clinical methodology outlined by changemanagementadvisory.org. That's surgery, resuscitation, and therapy. You diagnose those corporate viruses first, and then you treat them in a very specific sequence.
Phase 1 is surgery. The primary objective? Stop the bleeding immediately. The reports highlight that when your cash runway is measured in weeks, executives have to act as decisive, autocratic surgeons. There's no time for consensus or endless committee approvals. Take the famous turnaround of Philips in the 90s, for example. CEO Jan Timmer didn't form exploratory committees. He immediately closed 350 sites and cut inventory to save the core business. That is textbook corporate surgery.
Once the patient is stabilized, we enter Phase 2, which is resuscitation. Here, momentum is rebuilt, sales are revitalized, and the business pivots hard to avert total corporate death. Finally, we move to Phase 3, therapy. And look, this isn't a quick fix. This is years of fundamentally overhauling obsolete business models, rehabilitating the culture, and building an unassailable corporate immune system for long-term sustainable growth.
Throughout all of this treatment, management has to retrain those corporate muscles through 3 unyielding steps: cheaper, better, and faster. You ruthlessly seek savings without sacrificing quality, you optimize internal processes to remove friction, and you rely entirely on agile, data-backed decisions. This means completely eradicating vanity metrics. From now on, return on investment has to be proven by tangibly reduced cycle times and actual new revenue.
Let's move to this and see how this builds across the timeline. As simulated in the tools at turnaroundgame.org, it reveals a pretty harsh truth. True transformation takes sustained discipline, not just a quick PR bandage. Phase 1 is an emergency intervention executed in mere days or weeks. Phase 2 takes months of sustained momentum. And Phase 3? That requires years of steadfast discipline. Getting those early surgical weeks right is absolutely crucial because it makes securing external funding for the longer journey significantly easier. But here's a question. How do these corporate muscles move instantly when the brain commands them? Well, they need a modern nervous system. The source materials point directly to digital maturity and AI. You see, accumulated technical debt is actually an internal virus that cripples your data visibility. Modernizing your digital infrastructure isn't just a nice-to-have. It's a mandatory surgical procedure to transition the entity from needing reactive emergency surgery to maintaining a fortified, preventative wellness posture.
So, the crucial point is what happens when Pillar 2, your operational muscles, connects with Pillar 7, your digital nervous system. It's honestly amazing. Advanced AI effortlessly processes massive volumes of internal data to generate highly accurate, objective scenarios instantly. It literally strips away toxic office politics and cures the strategic procrastination that usually leads to a company's terminal decline, because leadership is finally making decisions based on real-time mathematical evidence.
I absolutely love this foundational principle pulled directly from the texts regarding the core mindset of a turnaround. It quotes Proverbs, "In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury." It is such a hard-hitting reminder. Endless strategic conversation without the actual labor of execution leads only to poverty and bankruptcy. Your corporate muscles are defined entirely by what they do, not what they sit around and discuss.
Which leaves us with the ultimate provocative question. Are your corporate muscles actually strong enough to survive the next major market shift? Because when the unexpected crisis strikes, your brilliant strategy won't save you if you lack the operational excellence to execute it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to take an objective pulse on your own corporate health today. Catch you next time.